Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Movie Shelf, where we take movies and we watch them and we put them up against other films in a ranked list. This time I'm going to be doing a movie from 2019, so this is the most recent picture that we're doing, and it is called Yesterday. Yesterday, and this is the 4K. I'll leave it here for a second. It was directed by Danny Boyle. You might recognize him from Slumdog Millionaire, Sunshine, many other movies. The writer of this story, his name was Richard Curtis. He's a British writer. You would probably recognize things like Love Actually, Notting Hill, Pirate Radio, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones's Diary. He even did some writing for Mr. Bean. It's a story that is quite unique and quite intriguing, and I think a lot of us could lose ourselves in something like this. Basically, the premise of the story is Himesh Patel plays Jack Malik, who is a struggling singer-songwriter, and he gets in an accident where he gets hit by a bus, and when he wakes up, he's missing. There's a few things missing. His front teeth are missing, first of all, and the Beatles don't exist. It's truly a fantasy story. And it's kind of, we've all thought about this before. So imagine this. The Beatles don't exist except for anybody except for you. And then you get to write the songs, sing the songs, and play the songs for everybody as if they're your own. And this story follows him along that journey. We'll talk about some of the ins and outs and the cool things and the things that I feel like they left out here. But let's talk about Himesh Patel. He's a British actor. He is a musician as well. His career was basically non-existent until this. He played a character named Tamwar Masood in the BBC soap opera EastEnders. That was his big claim to fame before doing this film. I actually love that they found a guy that is pretty much an unknown, because I mean it just adds so much when you get a new fresh face. And his co-star was pretty fresh as well. She was her name is Lily James. She plays Ellie Appleton in the film, and she had a ton of credits prior to Yesterday, but nothing was bigger than her role as Lady Rose McClare in the hit Downton Abbey. She is she's very good in this film and very charming. Both characters are very charming in this film, which adds to the lightheartedness of this film. I guess one of the things for me is when they were exploring this, they had two options. All right, and writer Richard Curtis obviously decided he wanted to focus on the love story just a little bit more than he did want to explore the Beatles music and claiming it as your own, because they could have went so much farther than they did with the music aspect of it. But and that to me is unfortunate, and that will be one of my criticisms when I give it a final score. And that's not that I have anything against love, it's just you see love in every film. You don't see a concept like this in every film that you watch. And sometimes, you'd rather see the concept be taken a little farther than, I mean, it's not impossible to do that without including, or without also including the love story as well. But I mean, there's some great cameos in here. Ed Sheeran plays himself. He's great in the film, and he's also very charming. After watching this film several times, I can't imagine him being played by anybody else. However, he was actually their third choice. The first choice was Harry Styles from One Direction. I wouldn't have liked that at all. The second one is intriguing, but I still think they made the right choice. Chris Martin of Coldplay was also up for this role, but he had a conflict of schedule. Thank God, because Ed Sheeran, I mean, it lands. It's really good. A good. They play well off of each other, and I'm not sure that you would have had that with Chris Martin. Kate McKinnon, she plays Deborah Hammer in this film, the greedy agent. She's fantastic, and I was actually amazed to find out that she was able to ad lib and improv all of her dialogue. They gave her a script, but everything she said turned out to be funnier than what they had written. So, um, uh, Richard Curtis told Danny Boyle to let her roll. So that's what happened. Some other things that end up missing along with the Beatles in this film. Coca-Cola. He asked for Coke on the plane, and she thinks he's looking for drugs. So he's like, "Oh, Pepsi." She's like, "Yeah, we have Pepsi." Cigarettes, also absent from the film. There's probably more that I'm missing, but those are the two notable ones that I picked out. This film, it grossed $153 million worldwide, against a budget of only 26 million. Now, 26 million, 10 million of that went to clear the rights to use the Beatles music, which they only had to do through Sony. But they wanted to go a step further because they didn't want to make a movie about, well, using the Beatles music without, the band signing off on it, or at least knowing about it or whatever. But they approached Paul McCartney, and he said he's fine with it. He just wants them to call it Scrambled Eggs. And they're like, why would we do that? And then he goes, well, when I was writing the song yesterday, I didn't have an actual title or lyrics, so I used Scrambled Eggs as my way to know what song I was addressing until I had it locked down. That's a really obscure inside joke, so they decided to stick with yesterday. Other titles, though, it was actually originally called All You Need, which I find curious because Richard Curtis must love that song, because it actually also appears in the movie Love Actually. Not that I've seen that. I actually have seen it many times, and I probably will review it at some point. But other than that, there was no creative input by the Beatles on this film. They did have an original concept to have the color purple missing also from existence. And there's even like going to be like a downplayed reference of the band Deep Purple being called Deep Orange. But the reason that they didn't include that as one of the things that was now gone from existence was because it would have been too much of a task to make sure that none of the extras were wearing purple in the film. So that's why that got eliminated. It's your classic love story. She's his agent. He's a struggling musician. She finds him gigs. He shows up to the gig excited, and it never quite turns out how he wants it to. So he decides he's going to give up. And then he gets hit by a bus, discovers the Beatles music is gone. He plays Yesterday for his friends when they give him a guitar when he comes out of healing. And they're like, who wrote that song? When did you write that? He's like, I didn't write it. The Beatles wrote it. And then they're like, the Beatles? Who's that? And that's when he discovers that the Beatles don't exist in this current plane of existence. And so he decides to run with it, starts, questioning himself. How am I going to learn, figure out all the lyrics? And, he does on a number of songs. And I think it's really cool. I always tend to tell the beginning of the story, but I don't want to get too far into like endings or things like that all the time. Like with The Shining, when I said he died, I mean, he froze to death. That was obvious. Everyone's seen that picture. There's a couple just last bits of like trivia, I guess, that I want to talk about before I give a final score. But if you followed me up until this point, you can see that it's a very unique story. And what would you do if uh if you were the only one that knew about the Beatles? Would you be able to put it together and make yourself famous using their material? How far would you go? But these are the things that I want you to see if you haven't seen the film. So check it out. When Jack flies to LA from Liverpool, because he goes to Liverpool to go on a discovery, because there's songs like Strawberry Fields where people are obviously going to question, where did that come from? You've never been there. So he had to go there and experience the things. And he sees Eleanor Rigby. He can't figure out the words to Eleanor Rigby. That's what spurs this whole trip. And so when he goes to fly back to Los Angeles from Liverpool, the camera lingers on the front of the airport building, and it says Liverpool International Airport. That's not a big deal, right? But any of you that have actually been to Liverpool would know that in reality, that sign on the building actually says Liverpool John Lennon Airport. So that's a cool thing that you might miss if you aren't familiar with it. That's why they linger on that shot, because they want you to be like, hey, John Lennon doesn't exist. Well, he exists, but he's not famous. Some of the characters' names are Beatles songs. I noticed Rocky, his assistant, obviously from Rocky the Raccoon. That's his roadie, his temporary manager once he leaves. Ellie, Jack's love interest, Eleanor Rigby, Ellie. You can make that connection. It also happens to be the song that, like I said, he has trouble remembering. Ellie's last name is Appleton in the film. Beatles founded the record label Apple Records. Ellie's roommate is Lucy, which Lucy in the Sky. There's probably others. That these are just the ones that I noticed, which is kind of cool, because if you're a Beatles fan, you should watch this film trying to find things, because I'm sure there are literally hundreds that I've missed. When I will say, when Jack is searching for this is cool, and not a lot of people are going to know this. When Jack was searching for inspiration in Liverpool, they see the grave of Eleanor Rigby. All right, that's a real grave in Woollen Church's graveyard. Though never confirmed as the actual inspiration for the song, John Lennon actually learned to ring the bells at Woollen Church. And he would have spent many years there as a child, probably playing in and around that graveyard. But the song was written by McCartney. Weird. When Jack goes back to America, they mentioned that he will be on Thursday Night Live, which they changed from Saturday Night Live, obviously. Kate McKinnon, who plays Ed Sheeran's manager, Deborah, which also becomes Jack's manager, is of course a Saturday Night Live star, celebrated for her convincing portrayals of many celebrities, including Ed Sheeran. One of the posters in Jack's bedroom is the Fratellis. The Fratellis took their name, obviously, from the criminal gang in the Goonies, which is Danny Boyle's favorite film. That's about all I got for you guys. This film is actually a lot of fun to watch. The particular scene that I want you to watch out for, because it'll rip your heart out if you let it, is the scene where he's just out of the hospital. He's meeting his friends up, and they've got a gift bag for him and some presents. They're just hanging out in a beach park, and they pull out a pair of teeth because he broke his teeth. Ha ha ha, gag. And they pull out a bus, like, because you got hit by a bus. And then his girlfriend gives him a guitar. He opens it and he's like, well, I kind of quit music. I don't really want to do this anymore. And then they're like, play something. So he plays the song Yesterday. And of course, in this reality, the Beatles don't exist. So everyone around that table is just flabbergasted, and I love, like, this acting was nailed on this scene because everyone there is just like floored, and it's very touching and moving. And he's like, come on, you guys, the Beatles. He's like, it's written by the Beatles in this accent. And it's just, it is one of the scenes that pulls this whole thing together. Like I said, I would have liked to see it indulge in more of what could happen if this scenario were to ever play out in real life, as opposed to following the love story more. That is really my only critique. I love the casting. I love that there's a bunch of nobodies in this film. Um, and you're going to start seeing them in a lot of other things probably, because it's that good. And Danny Boyle, obviously, is he's fantastic. Richard Curtis, his career stands on its own. I give this film, and you can have it on 4K actually. I'm going to rate this film an 83.7. 83.7, and that puts it third out of 3 on the all-time ranking list. I will see you guys next time on The Movie Shelf.